speaking on a mic is not a natural thing.
Yeah.
So it's hard for people to get used to.
No, I'm used to it. It's just usually if I'm on a mic, I'm in a band situation. I need to be like right on top of it.
We're rocking out,
yeah,
dude. So that brings me, Wilbur, thank you for coming here today to speak to us. But I would like you to kind of introduce yourself as if you were introducing yourself to somebody you're meeting on the street, because you're a man who's an oncologist, a researcher, you're part of the Board of Education for East Brunswick, you're also a musician and a woodworker.
Yeah.
So who are you, Wilbur Pan?
Oh gosh. So part of the thing that makes that difficult is I've lived long enough that there's a lot of stuff that I've done. It's not bragging. It's just I've been around for a while. But we can start, I think, by this. So I'm a son of immigrants. So my parents came over from China via Taiwan in the late 1950s, and they actually didn't know each other. They both happened to wind up in the Chicago area. That's where they met, got married, fell in love, got married, and then I came along. And that's where I grew up, is in being in Chicago. I decided I want to be a doctor when I grew up, and I won't, bore everybody with all the details, but eventually I decided on being a pediatric hematologist oncologist. Spent most of my life in training in Chicago, except for residency when I went down to Dallas for 3 years, and then went back to Chicago, and then I wound up in New Jersey really by happenstance. The reason I'm out here is because one of my attendings from when I was in Dallas came out to Robert Wood to head up the pediatric hematology oncology program while I was doing my fellowship training. And this is wild. So in my last year of fellowship, I was starting to look at jobs and trying to figure out what I wanted to do, and I heard from him. His name's Bart Kamen. He's passed away now, unfortunately. A great guy. But Bart calls me up and he says, "Hey, I heard that you're interested in taking care of kids with brain tumors." And so, I've been doing this research project. It's really hot. I think this can really go someplace. And he goes, "That's cool. Have you ever considered coming out to New Jersey to take care of kids with brain tumors?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Well, why don't you just come out here for a visit anyway? And it'd be good to catch up, and it'll be on my dime. We'll call it a job interview." And so I said, "Sure, why not?" So I came out here, met a bunch of people, got to catch up with Bart. And on the plane ride back, I'm holding a job offer, going, "What the heck happened?" And because the reason I was called out here was really to build a pediatric brain tumor program, which was completely different from the other things that I was looking at, which were mainly like lab research oriented and kind of on the level of you're taking the place of the old brain tumor guy who's either leaving or retiring, and you'll be the new one. And that's really how I wound up here, because the opportunity just seemed great, and I knew who my boss was going to be. And so it was really just me and Mary at the time. We figured, well, I didn't know anything about New Jersey, neither did she. We'd both grown up in Chicago, and we're the only ones in either one of our families that have moved away from the area. But I figured we can come out, take a look at it. If it doesn't work out, I can try to get a job back closer to home. And now it's 25 years later, and we've seemed to have planted roots.
Well, so now now you work for Merck, right? And you're the director of oncology for Merck.
Oh no, I'm one of the many clinical directors in the oncology program. Yeah.
Okay, so what does a day look like for you as a professional at Merck as you transition to kind of like a research position? Yeah, so I've always done research. It's just a matter of what the scope and what the environment was. So just to run things down. When I went to medical school, I got into the MD PhD program at the University of Illinois. I did lab research there. That's what I got my PhD degree in. When I was in residency, I did research, but these were little quick hit, clinical oriented things like doing a write up, looking at some data, writing up something quick, because that's all the time I had during residency, because that's when we're really not getting any sleep, up all night being on call and stuff.
when I was in fellowship, that's when I was working on this sustained laboratory project, trying to make things better for pediatric brain tumors. But then when I came out here, like I said, Bart wanted me to build a clinical program. And so my research focus shifted to things more on the clinical side of things. So being involved with clinical trials, trying to come up with, maybe some pilot studies for our patients, and some things that were adjacent to that as well. One of the things I did there was I became the director for pediatric medical education, and so I actually did medical education research as part of that. So now what I'm doing is working on breast cancer clinical trials, for Merck, to try to make things better in terms of treatments for women with breast cancer. The specific type I'm working on is called triple negative breast cancer. And really what I spend a lot of time doing is sitting in front of a computer looking at emails and looking at databases, and just trying to make sure that the study is being run well and that we know all the information about every single patient around the world that's participating in our studies, because at the end of the day we have to be able to analyze the data, and if the data isn't clean and we know all the details about what happened to each patient, then you wind up with a classic example of the old garbage in, garbage out thing. So that's really what my day-to-day life. It's really not super exciting, but it is rewarding, and
I can imagine. Yeah. I can really imagine. So you transition from working with children and looking at brain tumors. What made you switch to focusing on breast cancer?
Yeah, so the breast cancer thing was a bit of happenstance as well. I'd gotten to a point when I was at Robert Wood that I thought I should probably be doing something different. That's how I wound up, even looking for a new job in the first place. And then I got lucky, and Merck gave me the job offer to be one of their clinical directors, for the oncology program. But then I show up and they say, hey, my manager said, how do you feel about working on breast cancer? And I just said, okay, not really knowing anything about breast cancer, because of course kids don't get breast cancer. But I also kind of figured they gave me the job, so it's all on them anyway. But what in terms of making the transition, though, what I learned is, number one, doing cancer research is doing cancer research. The tools that I use in pediatric cancer for all the things that we took care of are the same tools that we use for breast cancer and all the adult cancers out there. So it was almost the way that I think about it to myself is that it's sort of like learning to speak a foreign language, but you already know all the grammar. And so all you need is vocabulary. And I think that's how I was able to, have some success, doing what I'm doing now. And in terms of not being involved with kids anymore, first of all, at Merck, I've had the good opportunity to work on some projects that involve pediatric cancer as well. So it's not like I'm, totally removed from that field anymore. But on the other hand, one thing I realized one day was that I used to spend time taking care of kids with cancer, and now I'm taking care of their moms, which is like a really a nice way of dovetailing those two parts of my life together. So that's also very satisfying. The bigger transition really was, and this is the other way that I look at my job. I used to practice medicine on a retail level, one patient at a time, and now I'm doing it wholesale. And that is a completely different look on what I'm trying to do.
Well, you get to help with the future, and you get to help a lot of people with your research.
Yeah.
And keep families together, because cancer is really difficult, and chronic disease is really difficult, and something we're fixing.
Yep.
Now, why? So, like, you have your plate full with cancer research and doing all of these things for Merck. What inspired you to end up like going into the Board of Ed of East Brunswick? This is a non-paid position with a lot to do. So what inspired you to kind of transition to doing this type of civil service?
Sure. So first of all, here's where I have to do the disclaimer. I, Wilbur Pan, am speaking for myself, and even though I'm on the Board of Ed for East Brunswick, I'm not speaking for the Board of Education for East Brunswick. Only the president of the Board of Education can do that. So, there's the standard disclaimer. So I think... So there's several things that factored into this. So one, education is like super important to me. Part of it is, I'm of Chinese descent, and one of the things that is a long-standing value in Chinese culture is education. It goes all the way back to Confucius's time, but that was also drilled to me in my head, for my parents, because I remember heading off to kindergarten. And the thing that my parents wanted to make sure that I understood as I was heading out the door to kindergarten was that the teacher was always right. It didn't matter what happened during the day. If I got in trouble, it was my fault, not the teacher's fault. And I
don't know if that's a programming anymore.
Yeah. And I had to basically treat the teacher on the same level as I was treating my parents. But more than that, education actually does run in my family. My grandparents ran a school in China for a while that would be the equivalent of like first grade through high school here, if I remember that correctly. My dad's a physics professor. He spent all of his career being a physics professor at Purdue. My sister is a high school teacher. She taught English, and she teaches Chinese as a foreign language now. Me personally, in terms of my day job, teaching was always the thing that I liked the best. Going all the way back to when I was a med student, because in many ways, medical training is one of the few apprenticeships that are still around. So you start your clinical training as a third-year medical student. When you're a fourth-year medical student, you're supposed to teach the third-year medical students. And when you're graduating and become an intern, you're supposed to teach all the medical students. And then when you become a senior resident, you have to teach the first and second-year residents, and so on and so on. If people ask me what my favorite part of my job was, it was always the teaching. So that really just ran in my blood. And the other thing is, and this is coming to me from lots of different angles, but I always was taught to be grateful for the things that I had and to give back, because because you should be grateful for the things that you have, and that's how you express gratitude. Also a core value in Chinese culture and lots of other cultures besides, but that's where I came from. And I actually became a Catholic in 2014, and that actually is the core one of the core parts of the Catholic faith, is that you receive a gift, you give it away. And I won't bore you all with like Aquinas's take on how God is love, and love is willing the good of the other, but that plays into it as well. And basically, I got to a point where I knew what the East Brunswick schools have done for my kids, because that's why we moved to East Brunswick. Why everybody moves to East Brunswick.
We moved here because of the schools.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was very grateful to the school district for what they've done for our kids, and so I was looking for a way to give back, and then that led me to looking at trying to get on the Board of Education.
Awesome. So, like, now that you've been on the board for what is it now? A year?
It's like 8 months. It started in January.
Yeah. So we're coming to a year. Mm-hmm. What's it been like overall? What's your experience doing civil service?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's actually been very gratifying, because I like to feel like I'm doing good work. People are nice enough to tell me that that I seem to be doing good stuff. And how much better can it get than that? Yeah. I mean, it is a lot of work, but on the other hand, I've kind of been running my life where I just do a lot of work.
Yeah.
So that actually isn't too much of a thing for me, and I really actually don't like to make a big deal out of it, because then you start getting into the why am I putting so much effort into this, and then my thoughts about what I'm doing become very transactional, and that's not why you should be doing things.
I agree. Yeah. What do you think is like the most urgent issue pressing? Not even East Brunswick.
Yeah.
I think just education in general within New Jersey. There's a lot of school districts that are facing similar issues regarding budgeting and all of these things. Like, East Brunswick is not alone,
right?
And sometimes I think townspeople can act like they are in this silo of misery or difficulty, but like, there's a lot of townships dealing with issues. What do you think are some of the most urgent, pressing ones?
Sure. Okay, so I got to say the caveat again. I'm speaking for myself, not as
you as
a member
Wilbur
of the Board of Ed, but I have looked into a lot of things. And as everybody here in town knows, we've had a budget issue this year and the previous year. And the thing ultimately comes down to, where are the resources coming from. Educating children well takes a lot of resources. And then the question is, where are we going to get those resources from, and how are we going to make sure they're applied in a way that's good? The second part of that, I actually think the school district does a great job of. Again, I can just look at my kids. I can look at our friends' kids. Talking as a whole to people around town, people seem to be very happy with the outcomes that they get for the schools. Now, is it perfect? No place is perfect. Is there room for improvement? Sure, of course there is. Again, no place is perfect. But as a whole, I think we do a pretty dang good job of educating our students here. But on the resource side, this is where, speaking as a pediatrician, I am actually somewhat sensitized to, because the way that I look at it is the question of funding for public education often comes down to, how much is it going to cost? And I think that's the wrong question. I think the real question is, what are we valuing here in terms of public education, and how do we express how we value that? And here, do you know Ronnie Chang?
Ronnie Chang, I don't know him personally.
Oh, okay, yeah, yeah, but great comedian. He's been on the Daily Show. He actually has been in Marvel movies.
Oh yeah, I know that. Okay,
yeah.
I thought this was an individual.
Yeah. No.
I didn't know him as an actor. Man, he was like in the Eternals, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
No. He was in Shang-Chi.
Shang-Chi. That's it. Okay.
Right.
That's
right,
it.
Yeah.
Yes.
So he's really funny, but he has this bit where he talks about taxes. And I'm not going to quote him because I'm guessing this is a family podcast exactly, but basically he's talking about like friends of his from the United States and their attitude towards taxes, and it's something like, I love this country, I hate paying taxes. I love this country, I hate paying taxes. And he goes, I love my mom, and I send her money every so often. So, and here, this is something I actually do think a lot about, in terms of why should we pay for public education in the first place? Because I think that's a fair question. So, number one, I think public education is great, because that's one of the great things about this country, is that people can come here with their kids, and their kids can get a good education and go on to do terrific things. I'm an example of that, right? Because without public education, I wouldn't be doing the things that I would do, and so I'm a big fanboy about that. Am I biased? Sure, but you got to convince me that the alternative model is better, and I'm still waiting for someone to really make that case. And the thing is what's built into the system is equity, because public education means exactly that. It's education for every kid in whatever your public is. In our case, East Brunswick. Right? So if we value that, then why shouldn't we put resources into this? And here I can just go over to how I see things as a pediatrician. So one of the things that I would tell the med students at Robert Wood in terms of why should you consider pediatrics as a career path? It's certainly not because you're going to make a ton of money, because pediatricians across the various fields of medicine are the lowest paid out of all the fields. Surgeons make more, internal medicine folks make more, OBGYNs make more, psychiatrists make more, family medicine makes more than pediatrics does. And the difference in salary is not insignificant. So I did pediatric hematology oncology. I can take care of kids with blood problems in all kinds of cancers. If I was an adult hematologist or an adult oncologist, I would be making easily twice what I was making as a pediatric version of that.
That's pretty wild. These are children.
It's pretty incredible, right? But and this is the point I make to the med students. The value of being a pediatrician is that you can say that you are providing more value for the dollar in terms of health outcomes than any other field out there. And so for example, you see you're a general pediatrician. You see this kid from day one after they're born, giving their vaccines and everything. Kid grows up. You talk to them about healthy lifestyle and all that. That's huge value, because if that's a kid that incorporates those healthy lifestyle lessons from their pediatrician, that's someone that's not going to need a whole ton of health care when they get older, and they're probably not going to be overweight. They're probably not going to get type 2 diabetes. They're probably not going to get high blood pressure and have to deal with all of the ramifications of dealing with those chronic diseases. For me in particular, this is the example I use. So one of the kids that I took care of, she was a little bit over a year old. We found out that she had leukemia, and this is a kid I took care of in fellowship during my training, and we fixed her. It was great, and now the kid grew up. And I got invited to her wedding not too long ago, which was a really incredible experience. But she is going to go and live a productive life doing things to help other people. And that's great. On the other hand, my dad has prostate cancer. And I love my dad and I want him to do well, but the fact is that if he does well, from an adult cancer standpoint, in terms of his prostate cancer, the rule of thumb is 5 years and you're cured. Well, I know what my dad did during those five years. It's not going to be as productive as my patient, who's got decades of doing stuff in front of her and raising a family and doing all of those other things.
Yeah.
So that's why I think public education has value, because the impacts that we make on a kid go on for decades, and that has implications for the society that we live in. That has implications, for our environment, and these are very long-term impacts that we can make by doing a great job educating our students.
Well, it's funny, you did this transition, and I wouldn't even say transition. I would say, so it's a transition to breast cancer treatments from working with children, and then you start going back to working with children, because then your interest with the Board of Ed is deeply rooted in children. Yeah. And then, so I know you from training you and just being around town, because I always see you everywhere. Yeah. And then also our children talk about you and
yes.
and talk about your son. My daughter specifically, because she does all the theater stuff, lyric, and she speaks about how you come in and then sometimes you'll jam with the kids and then you help out with the theater program. So can you tell me a little bit about like your music stuff? Because I know you play in a band.
Yeah.
So what kind of music do you do in the band? Like,
Sure.
how did you end up doing this also in addition?
Yeah. Well, the music part's easy. I play music because I love playing music. There's really no other
So what do you play?
reason for that. So I'll go back to when I was a kid. When I was a kid, first musical instrument I learned was the accordion. I have no idea why my parents...
like Weird Al Yankovic?
I have no idea why my parents
awesome.
signed me up for accordion lessons. I only did it for a year. And really what turned me off of that was... I remember this, like second grade or something like that, first or second grade. I remember I was supposed to, give a little performance at our school, and I had to carry the thing, the 5 blocks from my home to the school. And for a little kid, carrying an accordion case is pretty heavy. So so I gave that one up. But then I took piano lessons, like every good Chinese kid does.
Our kids took piano lessons.
Yeah.
The boys.
Yep. And that was great. But then when I got to 8th grade, freshman year of high school, I said, okay, I'm done with the piano. And then, like most teenagers growing up in the 70s, late 80s or early 80s, I wanted to play guitar in a rock band. So I started teaching myself how to play guitar. And so fast forward a few years, I learned how to play, and in my medical school, we put together this band for what we call the M1, M2 skits. And this is basically where the second year med students put together skits that make fun of the first year medical students. And we put together a band which was really, looking back, a pretty impressive band. It was large. We had two guitarists. I was one of them, bass player, drums, keyboards, saxophone, 3 vocalists. And we had like a 20-song set list that we put together. It's a miracle that we passed our boards that year.
What?
Because we spent so much time, playing that. And after we were done, one of my friends comes up to me and said, "You're really good." I said, "I'm just having fun." He said, "You should go to the blues jam at Kingston Mines." And I said, "No way!" that Kingston Mines is like one of the meccas for of blues clubs. It's like super famous. Like anybody that's ever played there, including like the Rolling Stones. Exactly that sort of place. But my friend kept saying, "No, really, you should go. You'll be fine." And so I started playing there. And then I started looking for ads for bands, and basically, ultimately, what wound up happening was that I had a gig on the blues circuit, playing in a band, and I had and I was in bands on Chicago's hardcore scene in the '80s, and it's a weird combination of music, but it was great because the blues playing blues music taught me how to listen to other musicians and play off of them, and pick things up on the fly. Because oftentimes a singer would just say, "Shuffle in G," and then we'd have to play a shuffle in G and wait for him to start singing to figure out what song we were playing. And then we'd have to like use eye contact to figure out like who was going to do what solo when. And just making it up. But the punk bands taught me how to play really tight. And so that's what I did when I was living in Chicago until we moved to New Jersey. And then the kids came along, and I didn't know anybody on the music scene, so all the guitar stuff went into the basement for a while.
And you pulled it back out.
And I pulled it back out because, some years ago now, one of my friends asked me if I wanted to, play in his band. And it was just like an old man Jersey cover band, which is also weird for me because I'd never played in a cover band before. Every band I'd been in was doing originals. Stuff. Yeah. And so that's what I've been doing over the past several years now. But the other fun thing is that now that I've started meeting musicians in the area, I wound up getting hooked up with this guy named Eric Harrison, who's a singer-songwriter, graduated from East Brunswick by coincidence. And even though he's not quite my age, but he's older. And he's an attorney. But what he does, he loves writing and recording and playing music. So he writes a bunch of songs, he records them, and he has a live band and plays out with them. And I'm in his live band. So
awesome. That's
yeah.
I don't know where you find the time.
Yeah.
And then in addition to doing this, so between all the science and the arts, we have some stuff here because you also, as a hobby, do woodworking.
Yeah.
And I use hobby kind of loosely because you're also going to be doing a presentation at like Woodworking in America.
Yeah.
So please tell me how we have this hobby as well, in addition to all the other stuff.
Yeah, well, like everything in my life seems, this is also, kind of happenstance and coincidence. So, growing up, we were pretty poor, when I was a kid. I actually do remember one year where my parents asked me, when I was, 3 or so, if I wouldn't mind taking a pass on Christmas presents that year because they were trying to save up money to buy a house. And I also remember at one point, I actually don't remember. This is what my parents told me. They said there was a period of time where they kept finding me sleeping in the bathroom because the tiles were cooler and it was hot in my room, and we didn't have air conditioning because we couldn't afford such a thing. So as a result, like most families in that situation, my dad would just build things for the house. Now, he had no love for this. He just did it because he kind of had to, because the alternative was not to have a bookcase, for example. And so I saw that, and that kind of stuck with me. And then later on, I saw on PBS there were woodworking shows. Norm Abrams doing New Yankee Workshop, and Roy Underhill, doing the Woodwrights shop. And I would just watch these guys, for a half hour each, making stuff out of wood, and I was just fascinated by it. Now, I had no wherewithal to actually do this stuff myself. Because I was living in apartments, and you need space, to take on something like this. Although it's not impossible, there actually are people that do apartment woodworking now. Yeah. So anyway, fast forward to now, we bought our home in East Brunswick. I eyeballed a spot in the basement where I thought I could set up a shop, and by coincidence, my backdoor neighbor, his name's Mark, he's a fantastic woodworker. He is just amazingly good. And so he showed me some things, and Mary talked to him about getting a birthday present for me in terms of woodworking lessons. So he made a recommendation, and there is a thing at Monmouth County's adult education program. They had a woodworking thing for a while.
Oh.
Yeah. And I took that class, and it was unbelievable. So that's how I started teaching myself how to do woodworking, along with taking classes and stuff. But just being able to build stuff is
so awesome. What have you made? What's your coolest thing for you? You're oh
gosh,
I made this. I'm super excited.
Yeah, that's hard. It's like trying to pick your favorite child. Although I have no problem picking my favorite child. So. It depends on the day, though. Sometimes the favorite one switches. Yeah. But
what was a really impressive piece? Something difficult.
Yeah. So there are two things that come to mind for different reasons. So one is a thing called a Bible box.
Okay.
So a Bible box is a box about this big. It sits on 4 feet. It was a pretty common item for people living in what's now the Philadelphia area to have back in pre-Revolutionary War times. And it was called a Bible box because that's where you put the Bible. The things that make it a Bible box is that there's a hinged lid on it, so you can just drop the Bible in it, and there's a lock on the thing, and the 4 feet. So I built one of those. It was kind of decorative because I used veneer on the front of the thing. That's something I'd never done before when I tried doing that. It came out really nice. I actually use it as a talking point in one of, in the woodworking talks that I that I give, but it's probably the nicest thing I've ever made. The other thing is that there's a bookcase that sits in our living room, and the bookcase itself isn't really impressive or hard to do from a construction standpoint, because I basically found this this plan from an Italian designer. I'm forgetting his name. I think it's Enzo Mari. I could be wrong on that one. But he was a guy that was around in Italy in the 1950s. And Italy, of course, was on the wrong side of World War II at the time, recovering from that, and it was very poor. And but people still needed furniture. And his thing was making furniture designs so that people could build furniture with off-the-shelf lumber and a hammer and nails. And I just liked the design and how it looked, and the fact that there's a little bit of a story behind it. So I made that for our living room, and it wasn't hard, because again, it was just like nailing a bunch of boards together, and according to the style of the bookcase. But the key thing for me is that I made that bookcase to fit in the space along the wall that I had it to within a half inch on either side. Yeah. So it just like maximized the storage space of the bookcase for that part of our house. And the real thing for me in terms of woodworking is that it's incredibly freeing, because if I need something, I can just make it. And I can make it to fit whatever the requirements are in my house. And there's other times I've done that too. I made a little tiny table to slot in between the gap between our sink and the wall in our old bathroom. And if you look at it by itself, it's a very weird looking table, because it's very tall and very skinny.
So Wilbur, I mean, after speaking to you a bunch today and learning a lot about your life and your profession, you seem like a man who's a fixer. You like to fix things and help people.
Yeah.
What are your motivations for doing so much community service and giving back, and what kind of legacy as like a person you want to leave with all this work? I know that's a big, heady question.
Yeah, that is. You're going to make me go back to Aquinas again.
Yeah, go to Aquinas. I don't think there's anything wrong with philosophy and religion.
Sure. Okay. So one of the other things I do is St. Bart's has the OCIA program. It's the Order of Christian Initiation for Adults. So basically what this means, if you're a grown-up and you want, or if you're too old for CCD and you need to get some sacraments, or you want to become a Catholic, that's the program that you go through. So one of the core things that we always hit on is, why do we do the things that we do? Because what I've learned in my life, actually prior to becoming Catholic, is just that being a Catholic, I think it gave me the vocabulary to really talk about this well, is that the reasons that we do the things that we do are as important, if not more important, than the actual things that we do. So, for example, you can have two people doing the same thing. One of them wants to do it because they want to help people. The other one wants to do it because there's an ulterior motive of some sort. Really the focus is on something else, self-gain, something that's going to be profitable for that person. The outcome is, on the surface, going to be the same, because the thing will get done, and whoever the thing is supposed to help, they'll get the help. But in the long run, one way of doing things is going to be far better than the other one. And that's the thing that I really took to heart. This is something that my parents taught me. This is something that being a Catholic has taught me. I'm going to quote Aquinas. So Aquinas says that the true nature of God, if you had to really sum it up, is that God is love. And so then the obvious question, well, what is love? Well, love in this context means willing the good of the other as other. And here I can use Mary as an example. So when we first started dating, I was in love with Mary, right? Why? Because anyone that's met Mary knows that I'm not doing any better. But why was I being nice to her? So she would go out on another date with me, because I liked, I liked being with her. That's not real love in this sense, right? Real love is doing something for somebody else without any expectation of something coming back to you. And that's actually not an intuitive thing for people to understand, especially in today's society, because many times the interactions that we have with people are transactional. For example, you go to you go to the store and you buy some vegetables, and you come home and you find out that what you thought was a pound of cherries is like really 3/4 of a pound of cherries, and you got ripped off, and you get all mad because you lost that money. Love is nowhere in that equation. Now, I'm not saying that we should give up a 1/4 pound of cherries when we go to the store, but the point is that this approach, understanding what love truly is a really great way of centering your life. So if I was looking for a reason why I do those things, is because that, I really want to say this without sounding like I'm bragging here, but that really is what drives me. Because again, if you look at what I do on a transactional level, why should I have spent so much time getting educated, getting degrees, spending time in training to go do something? I could have easily have done something else with that time. Why did I choose to go into pediatrics, given that it's the worst paid area of medicine? The opportunity cost between pediatrics and being, say, an ENT is huge, right? Like I said, this is something that I think is de-emphasized in these days. For example, there's a lot of talk about how market forces are the way to do things, and I'm not trying to say that the free market is a horrible thing or anything like that, but at some level, the free market is based on everybody looking out for their own selfish interests. And it is a way of providing efficiency and making things less expensive, and giving people more opportunities to get things that they might not otherwise be able to get. And I'm all for it. I'm all for that. But there's also bad outcomes that come from that behavior as well. The tragedy of the commons. Right? Me. Yeah. And then no one's keeping an eye on the big picture anymore. And that's where I think that concept of love really comes into play, because here, doing something for someone else without any expectation in return, that's really what drives our society.
So Wilbur Pan's legacy will be one of love, I think.
Why not?
I think you answered it.
Why not?
So my last question for you is, what kind of advice would you give to a young person today trying to come up and become a professional and do their thing?
Yeah. Wow, so many things are coming to mind. I think one key thing, I'm not going to say this is the thing, but a very important thing is that your life is going to take unexpected turns in ways that you have no way of anticipating. So embrace that and look for those opportunities, because that does a number of things, for a young person. I think number one, it opens up their eyes to the idea that something might catch them by surprise that will be extremely gratifying. Number two, it gets us away from the idea that, going back to students, and I'm guilty of this too, because I kept asking my kids, like, what are you going to do when you grow up? What are you going to do when you grow up? And that can be a very paralyzing question, because you take a teenager and say, what do you mean, what am I going to do when I'm going to grow up? I plan on living another 70, 80 years. At this point, you need me to plan that all out right now. But I think what happens, though, is that I've learned a better way of phrasing that question. And really the question is, what is your plan? And this is advice I would give to the med students all the time in terms of applying to residencies, because given my role as the pediatric medical education director, I was sort of like the default person, or one of the people that the students would always go to if they wanted to go into pediatrics. And I would sit them down and I'd say, okay, I'm going to give you a piece of advice I know no one else is going to give you. What do you want to do with your life? But I want you to get as specific and detailed as possible. And they would stare at me like, what do you mean? And I said, okay, so here's an example. Okay, we're assuming you want to go into pediatrics as you're talking to me. Yep. Okay, so we came to that thing. Okay, what do you want to do? Do you want to be a general pediatrician? Do you want to specialize in something? Do you want to do a surgical type of thing that involves pediatrics? And the student would pick something. I'll say, okay, I'll just take pediatric nephrology as an example. And I said, fine, let's dig deeper. What is it about pediatric nephrology that just gets you going? Is it renal failure? Is it transplant? Is it congenital kidney disease? Is it dealing with sequelae from urinary tract infections that are bad enough that they damage the kidney? What is it? What's the thing that floats your boat? And at this point, the student usually starts looking really nervous and saying, "Well, I don't want to, pigeonhole myself. I don't want to, put myself in this corner that I can't get out of." And then this is the thing I would tell them. I'd say, you're not doing that, because the idea of getting detailed in terms of what you want to do in the future, this is a plan. It's not a contract. And so you can change that plan at any time, and it'll be fine. But the thing is, by going through the exercise of trying to figure out what your plan is, that'll make you more prepared for when the surprises come. And in a nutshell, in my professional career, this is kind of that's actually what kind of happened to me, because I didn't start residency planning to do pediatric hematology oncology. It just sort of fell into my lap halfway through residency. So then I applied, got into the program I wanted to go to. I kind of knew that I was interested in pediatric brain tumors, but I didn't really know that until I started dealing with those patients. And I said, fine. And then I thought, as I mentioned before, I would get a job doing lab research on pediatric brain tumors at some medical school. And instead, the job that I got was to build a clinical program, which is very much different.
Yeah.
Yep. And then I did that for a while, and then there's a program that opened up at Robert Wood in terms of palliative care for kids, and that didn't exist before, but I wound up getting involved with that. And then 5 years after that, I became the pediatric medical education director. And then about 7 years after that, I found myself in the pharmaceutical field, and none of this stuff was planned. And I think that's that part, the inherent chaos that life is the part that I think we're not messaging to our students or to our kids very well, and the idea that they should embrace the thing, because honestly that's what keeps life interesting, right?
I agree with you, Wilbur, and I want to thoroughly thank you for being here today. And being a community leader within East Brunswick and our neighbors. I really think you're a good reflection of what our town needs and the leadership that our town needs. Yeah. So thank you for being part of our community.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. I mean, community leader is actually a really strong word.
I don't think so. I can say whatever I want. This is America. Yeah. So I'm calling you a community leader with I believe, some future other aspirations. But
no.
I'll keep my mouth shut and behave today. But thank you again, Wilbur.
All right, thank you.